Hi everybody. So this video is walking you guys through your second essay assignment. And you guys have read a lot of different poems in this unit. They've poems that are varying in structure, in voice, and themes, and the literary elements that they incorporate, the figures of speech. So you guys are going to actually use two different poems from two different authors read in this unit. So they do have to be poems from this unit. You're going to compare and contrast those poems in terms of literary analysis. So I want you to use all of the material that you guys have had in this unit, so all of the lectures, to help frame the argument around the comparison between these two poems. So when you compare these poems, you can choose poems that seem to kind of naturally go together, or you could compare poems that maybe are unexpected pairs. You need to show how they're different and similar in the literary elements that they use. So theme, voice, imagery, figures of speech, everything we've studied so far. And then you should use the graphic organizer that you created to help you organize your thoughts and kind of your general flow of the essay. So you do need to have two sources to support your claim. One of those does need to be a scholarly source from the Garden City database. And then your essay is due on Sunday, April 5th at midnight at 11:59 p.m. Your essay must be 3 to 4 pages in length and requires standard MLA, so that means to the bottom of the third page at minimum. Remember that everything is checked for plagiarism, and remember to use proper citation. So you will need to have in-text citation, and then you'll need to have a bibliography that has at least 4 entries on it. It should have the 2 poems, and then the scholarly source, and whichever other source you choose, your credible source, of course. You guys can see you have a ton of options here. So choose poems that are of interest to you, choose poems that have points that you can compare to one another. So think strategically and try and think through what are the literary elements that you want to compare. And again, you really want to frame this similarly to your first argument, where you have sort of a central thesis, a central concept, or a central driving idea, and then choose 2 to 3 other sort of literary elements to help support those as your other main ideas. So your thesis in this case should be more than just, say, for example, The Road Not Taken and Suicide Note have a lot of similarities and differences. They have similarity differences in what sense? In X, Y, and Z. So you could talk about the structure is, say, different. They both use the essential idea of imagery to convey whatever it might be, lost choices. And then your third main idea could be something like both authors had a direct connection to the subject matter of the poem, or something like that. So make sure that you use the lecture material. Make sure you're using the concepts that you've learned in this unit to break down and analyze these poems. And as always, pull good concrete evidence from the text and from your secondary sources. That means good quotes that show or prove the main idea. So remember that you also, this is quite important, when you create a comparison essay, you don't want to have one paragraph for each poem. You don't want to spend a paragraph on theme for English B and then another paragraph on whatever it might be, Stopping by the Woods. You want to instead compare them across a thematic concept, across the main idea. So in each paragraph, you should have a short section on each poem across the central idea. So for example, if you were going to do, let's say, The Flea and To the Virgins, you would say that the first idea is that both poems talk about the central concept of the theme of carpe diem. And then you would show how To the Virgins talks about it, and then how The Flea compares in talking about the same concept, and pull quotes from both poems that show that concept of carpe diem and why and how both authors convey that idea. And then you'd move on to a second idea, and you would say, whatever it might be, that these were both early modern poems. And then you would talk about how they convey early modern language through the syntax that they use. And then you do a third main idea and compare them together. So make sure that you do compare them thematically across these concepts rather than individually in different paragraphs. This is how you create a more complex compare and contrast argument. So some things you might think about. How do the works connect in terms of theme and other major literary elements? How are the structures similar or different, and how does that change or impact the meaning of the poem? How do the differences and similarities between the authors or the historical situations, what was happening around the poem, impact the social, political, or economic situation surrounding the work? So, for example, how was Theme for English be representative of a particular social or political or economic standing or issue? And same thing as, say, I don't know, a valediction forbidding mourning. How did that talk about, the trauma of war? So these are just some concepts you can start thinking about. You guys are going to be assessed in making sure you have a good argument with a fully developed thesis statement, introduction, good close analysis of the works and their major concepts, good evidence from the poems to support your claims. So both from the poems and from your secondary sources, proper page length, MLA, proper number of outside sources, and of course citations in text and on the bibliography. Fully developed essay structure, including a good intro, like I said, a thesis, clear main ideas with evidence, and a conclusion, and careful and clear organization across these thematic concepts rather than having a section for each author. So if you guys have questions, let me know. Otherwise, again, this is purposely broad because I want you guys to choose what is of most interest to you. There's a lot of good material, a lot to say on all of these. And I would suggest using your scholarly article as a nice way to kind of kick off your research and see what are the major concepts, the major themes, the major ideas that scholarship is talking about that you may want to incorporate into your argument.